Well, it's May 12th of 2022, and I'm really excited that we have Hashport on with us. Jessie Whiteside is the Director of Business Development for Hashport, and we're looking forward to talking with him. So, hello, Jessie Whiteside. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, we're really excited to have you and get all the news of Hashport. You've been working really hard behind the scenes, and we're looking forward to hearing your news. So, for those of us who we know you, a lot of the community already knows you, but would you like to give us a little brief overview of what Hashport is and what you do for the Hedera network?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hashport is an interoperability solution, which currently is connecting the Hedera network to both Ethereum and Polygon, and it's a platform agnostic solution that over time, is really going to, I think, leverage interoperability in a way that is going to allow for dApps and different interesting things to migrate over to Hedera as more and more people become aware of the network and its inherent benefits in comparison to some of the other networks out there. It's really interesting in terms of being able to not only highlight Hedera, but also just the broader DLT ecosystem and everything that's out there. One of the big things, or I think one of the hot topics right now, even in this market that we're seeing, is talking about interoperability and how going forward. That's going to be such a big component for a lot of these use cases, and even use cases that we haven't even thought of yet. Much the same way that much of the Web 2 world is seamless and interoperable for users, and their experience is somewhat similar no matter what device they may find themselves on. The same sort of thing, I think, is going to repeat itself with Web 3 and especially with digital assets moving between networks for a variety of reasons. So super exciting to be helming this, and especially for the Hedera community. I know that DeFi is just around the corner for Hedera, and we're going to be there for all of it to support in every way we can.
Well, I know that the last time that you were on, which was I believe it was October of 21, you had maybe one or two tokens that you had on your platform, and now I'm counting 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 of them. So you've been busy.
Yeah, and those tokens have actually been there for quite some time as well. We have been busy. We've been busy, although we've been busy with that. We've also been busy with solutions that we're looking to implement on the platform, particularly around technical implementations that will allow for much broader or larger use cases potentially to be leveraged across Hashport. Our tech team has been at work developing the API and SDK functionality for the platform. So going forward, we're going to be able to work more closely with developers and platforms to natively integrate Hashport into sort of the services that they offer, and maybe even offer that interoperability functionality without necessarily needing to head directly to the Hashport website. We are also looking to add a whole host of new assets going forward in the coming weeks and months. So be on the lookout for that. And really just, as time moves forward, trying to add a lot of functionality and features that will make the movement of digital assets as painless as possible for the user, be it a large scale use case or just right down to the individual user wanting to just move some tokens from one network to another. So a lot of hard work on the back end, that's for sure. But a lot of that is now in place or will be shortly, and just looking forward to what typically happens when you get all these components and pieces onto an interoperability solution for, in particular, Hedera with a network that's just coming online with respect to DeFi and decentralized exchanges. Really exciting times ahead, I think.
And maybe you could describe the process of onboarding new networks, and what does that look like for Hashport?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of adding new networks, that's something that we haven't actually really been considering a whole lot as of yet. We really want to get down first the all of the technical functionings that will allow for easy transfer of assets between Hedera, Polygon, and Ethereum, and also those larger scale use cases potentially. Once if we were to turn our attention to adding new networks down the line, especially EVM networks, it should be a fairly straightforward process in that we've already got both Polygon and Ethereum. So we could most likely add networks in very short order, but we've been trying to focus more on the functionality that the platform is going to have, so that when the time comes where DeFi is in full swing on Hedera, and users are looking to, or platforms are looking to migrate, it's just that much easier of a process for them to do so.
Well, I noticed on your app that you have a new beta for NFTs.
Yeah, we do. Thanks for noticing that. So NFT functionality is live on the main net right now. We are, however, working closely with several projects that are looking to have that functionality enabled for their NFTs. NFTs do need to be, for this solution, do need to be whitelisted and be put on as compatible with the platform. And one thing I will mention is compatibility can be ensured by following HIP 4. I believe it's HIP 412 or 418. But we've also got that in our documentation as well in terms of how to structure metadata. But yeah, you're totally right. We do have that feature coming out, and shortly, many projects will be able to start migrating assets both to and from Hedera. So if there's any projects out there that want to migrate assets over to either Ethereum or Polygon, and you're compliant with those HIPs, please do get in touch, and we'd be more than happy to work with you to make sure that your NFTs are compliant and can be migrated.
Okay.
It's either 412 or 418. It's just not right at the tip of my tongue, but it's one of those two HIPs pertains to NFT metadata. So if users follow along with what's being outlined in those, and also you can see them on our documentation on the Hashport website, you should be good to go in terms of being compatible with the interoperability platform.
So when you say that the NFTs have to be whitelisted, what is that your criteria for the beta?
Yeah, so I mean, before that HIP came out, there were NFTs that were created with metadata that weren't exactly, the data wasn't exactly put into the right fields, or the appropriate fields, I should say, to be, when you do the porting process, to actually have them populate correctly on the other side of the bridge. So while it's not impossible to eventually have those NFTs on, we're sort of asking that all NFTs that would like to have interoperability with them conform to that HIP specifically, because if that's the case, then it's a very easy process for us to whitelist.
I see. Well, that might be really interesting for our NFT community to understand that and to look into that, because there's a lot of NFTs being built within our community.
Yeah, there are, and one of the promising things about that is since the advent of that HIP in question, nearly all projects are already following it, or most of them are. That we've come across. So it is a very good thing in that most people are already following that procedure.
HIP 412.
Ah, perfect. Hey.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, May. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. I just wanted to comment specifically on this, just to wrap up the comments on HIP 412 and NFTs on Hedera. HIP 412 is a community initiative that that I started, and I had all of the major NFT marketplaces and like Galaxy and Venly and everyone come in, and we built a robust and flexible metadata schema that is now the standard across the entire network. So that is the HIP is now official. It's replaced HIP 10 if you're familiar with the old version, and anyone who is making an NFT on Hedera will hopefully follow that standard, and then everything is compatible and everything is able to read those NFTs and make them work. So this makes it easier for everybody, and that is what Hashport has implemented to simplify the NFTs that they are going to be porting. So very exciting.
So May, do you know if our current marketplaces are in compliance with that?
They are mostly in compliance. There's obviously legacy NFTs that were made prior to HIP 412 that are not compliant, but we are probably going to either support those older NFTs one by one, or those platforms will have some mechanism to update the NFTs. It really depends on how each platform addresses them, but going forward, all of the NFTs made should follow that to make things easier for everybody.
Well, thank you so much for doing that, May. Standards are so important as we build out the infrastructure that we all believe in and want to work on. So that's really great news to hear that you've done that. Thank you so much, May. I wonder if you want to discuss a little bit, Jessie, about where you see Q3 and 4 of this year and Hashport's, how do you see the rest of the year panning out for Hashport?
Yeah, I think that despite what's going on in the markets right now, and regardless of what ends up happening ultimately in the next 2 quarters in that way, I think that there's a lot of exciting stuff that we're going to have. We're also going to have a V2 of the platform out shortly. I can't give exact dates on that, but that will be something that's just around the corner, and it has a whole host of improvements that just make the platform that much easier to use for users, in terms of additional mobile compatibility and different things like that. So be on the lookout for that. But in terms of the actual use of the platform and projects and assets flowing across Hashport, in particular going from Ethereum and Polygon to Hedera, I think there's a great deal. There will be a great deal of demand for that as we have DeFi platforms coming online on Hedera. I think it's contingent, sort of on both pieces being in place. If there's not much in the ecosystem for those assets to do in terms of new protocols and new platforms that potentially are offering attractive APYs and returns, there's just not going to be the same kind of demand for the platform. However, when they do come online and there are new tokens and features, and users can come across easily with their assets and test the Hedera network out and try things for themselves, I think the proof's really going to be in seeing it for themselves firsthand. And if you look typically at what happens with L1 and L2 networks that suddenly have a robust DeFi ecosystem with DEXs and AMMs and lending protocols, you typically see in a very short period of time a great amount of volume come across from other networks, more established networks, into those networks. So if you're to look at Avalanche or Phantom or Solana or even BSC, you're typically seeing in that, and granted, market conditions may play a part in that, but you're typically seeing billions of dollars in volume flowing across to the new fledgling network. So we think that Hedera is going to be no different, and eventually when users realize the power and benefits that the Hedera network offers in its own unique way, that in the same footsteps as these other networks, there's going to be a significant amount of interest and volume that flows into the network. So really exciting stuff, I think, in Q3 and Q4. And to the point that I made earlier about adding those new assets that we're looking to, that's steeped heavily in researching some of the other interoperability solutions out there in terms of looking at what the typical assets that we're flowing across. Obviously, a lot of them are stable coins, but there's other interesting ones as well that we'll be looking to add that comprise the bulk of those volume flows to these new networks. So we've really tried to take a ground up approach in understanding exactly what is going to be demanded when the time comes, when Hedera's DeFi network comes into its own. And also, protocols and platforms on Hedera with their HTS tokens, if they're looking to expand out to other networks as well, the ability for them to have their token have a presence on these other connected networks as well, I think is going to be an incredibly important thing to attract new users and new volume coming into Hedera as well. So I think as much as Hashport's going to enable volume to come in, just as it would, I think it's equally as important that platforms that are being built natively on Hedera are going to be able to have a way to market and attract users of these other networks to their platforms. And I think all the networks that are connected are going to be better for it over time as things progress.
Yes, well, we have Happy Chappie from Stater staking, and this might be something that you, Happy, would be able to comment on.
Hey, Elisabeth, thanks for inviting. Yes, absolutely. We would love to port over our HBAR ETH over to other networks like Ethereum and Polygon, and increase the reach of HBAR ETH. That's definitely something which we always look forward for.
Yeah, and eventually that definitely is something that could be done. Absolutely.
I'm sure you're familiar with the Stater and the liquidity pools that they're providing.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And we've had a conversation about that potential. And when the time is right, absolutely we can work with Stater to do that if that's what they're looking to do.
Great. Yeah, we look forward for that.
Thank you, Happy. Yes, Charles.
Oh, no, I was just giving them a round of applause. That's cool. That sounds like a good opportunity for both of y'all.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's going to be a great opportunity. Like I was saying, it's going to be a great opportunity for platforms developing on Hedera to get the word out about Hedera and about its benefits and features by having a presence on these other networks. I think the ability to migrate tokens across and be able to interact with users of these other platforms and have them potentially obtain their token natively on those foreign networks, and then subsequently learn of the platforms and understand that they need to come back across to Hedera if the platforms in question natively are operating via Hedera, and they need to come over as a necessity. I think that's just a big benefit to the whole Hedera ecosystem as a result of that.
For sure, win-win.
Yes, Charles. Lance, did you want to contribute?
Yeah, thanks. Jessie, you brought up DeFi assets, and I think that's definitely something we're going to see a lot of, assets that are digital moving across chains. And DeFi launching on Hedera will definitely bring a lot of interest and activity in that. But we also have smart contracts 2.0, which I think is probably pretty attractive to a lot of different use cases that might have launched on other chains. Particularly ones that may already have an established governance token or an established utility token. With Hashport really being critical infrastructure to moving those assets over so the actual use case can migrate. Have you seen or talked to a lot of projects that are in that situation? I know we've seen Dovu do that recently, but just kind of curious if you've talked to quite a few other use cases that are thinking about coming to Hedera and kind of what the interest is from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Thanks for asking it. And yeah, pretty clearly, we have been talking with other platforms, and I can't talk of specific names, obviously, the early stages, but there definitely is interest out there. One of the, and I typically talk about this, whenever I'm talking to anyone I can. Um, One of the biggest things I have noticed is it simply boils down to a lack of awareness of smart contracts on Hedera, of the fact that Hedera is moving to open source and all these other things. It becomes a much more attractive network and proposition for these platforms when they learn of this. It's just a lack of awareness. So a lot of times when I bring up these points when I'm talking to these platforms. They may not even know of it, and then they become interested, and then obviously it takes some time to go from that sinking in, and depending on what their business plans and roadmaps are, to actually moving towards you know either moving some of their token across and deciding to create on Hedera natively, or just moving their tokens independently to expand their platform. So to answer your question, yeah, we are talking to platforms, and there is interest, particularly from a couple off the top of my head. And I think, especially as, again, it all boils down to having dexes, having a few native platforms that are developed on Hedera that show the power of Hedera, and then suddenly you're going to get a whole host more of liquidity. When the liquidity comes in from these other networks, you're then going to have this cyclical effect, I think, where the more liquidity comes in, the more the network becomes an attractive spot for these platforms to build on, especially when you couple it with smart contracts 2.0 and all the other features and benefits that Hedera provides in terms of HCS and HTS, and just the robustness and functionality that Hedera offers compared to some of the other networks. I think that there's just going to be a whole lot of synergies there that over time we're going to see. It might be a trickle at first, but it's going to eventually lead to just a massive stream and pressure, constant pressure of dApps and use cases looking to migrate across with their platforms, and especially as it becomes even easier and easier for the migration of smart contracts and sort of keeping all of the things that they're already accustomed to in place when they move them across. And they have all of the same features and creature comforts that they've had traditionally on whatever network that they find themselves on. I think you're going to have less and less of a reason not to be moving, especially when Hedera enables older use cases. Like if you look at the Dovu example, Dovu has been around since 2016. Dovu, it has a great use case, and they've got a great team behind it. And the fact that they were able to move to Hedera and actually be on a network that is carbon negative and can facilitate the kinds of large scale transaction volume that you would need to operate a use case such as that at scale. I just think eventually users and platforms are going to need a Hedera out of a necessity. So I'm very excited for all this stuff. It's been a long time coming. I've been in the ecosystem since about 2017, and I've been following every step of the way with many of you here. And I think the time's coming where Hedera is a dominant and premier network that platforms look to build on. And I mean, obviously, I'm so surprised at how little fanfare outside of the community. A lot of the announcements and things, that even was touched on just at the beginning of this meeting, in terms of these large scale enterprise use cases that are being developed. But I mean, for many of us here that have seen what is being built in the background, I just think a lot of the more traditional DeFi ecosystem is going to start picking up on that, and more. I know I'm going on about this, but I think more and more what we're going to see is these use cases coming across. as they realize just what Hedera can represent for them.
Yeah, well, we always are in a little bit of a quandary. It has how to get the word out, because part of adoption is awareness. And
Yep.
as you said today, I mean, it was a huge announcement today, and it's we can't compete with the Luna drop. It's like what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I think obviously anytime despite what's happening with Luna, it's just bad to see for people in the space. I feel for people that are impacted by it. But at the same time, what we can do is just continually be engaging and having these conversations, especially with people that we know, are working within these other ecosystems. I think having those conversations, those meaningful conversations, is one of the most important things that we can do. And we've got a whole host of new features and tools, even over the past couple of years, Twitter Spaces included, to be able to sort of do that. So you bring up a good point in that getting awareness out is one of the most crucial factors. I think that's something I'm going to take away from the spaces as to what we can do to spur that on as well.
Well, I think what you guys do in just your the bridges that you build in your platform, and by having Hedera be that on one of those bridges, that's creating awareness for when you present your when you present your platform to others, then they say, well, what's Hedera? I mean, it's amazing to me that I think once this is my thought. Once the Hackathon 22, Hedera Hackathon 22, is over with the 2,500 people that are in it, some amazing use cases are going to be presented for smart contracts 2.0. And those contracts will then be implemented. I mean, even Mark Cuban the other day tweeted about how Web3 is going to need substantial innovation in terms of smart contracts. So, that I am hoping will create some awareness about our ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think smart contracts do have their place and are extremely beneficial. I also think that ultimately one of the big things that gets overlooked with Hedera is the potential and the ability long term to maybe build use cases that leverage HTS, HCS, and API functionalities such that you can build a use case without the need for smart contracts. One of the conversations I've had previously with Jim Nazar of Acor, was around the fact that smart contracts for as good as they are, ultimately they're not nearly as secure as creating a use case or functionality with the native components that you can find on Hedera. So while obviously certain use cases will call for smart contracts and things of that nature, I think also one of the more exciting things that I've seen in my time in the ecosystem is the potential for use cases to also leverage bare metal, the power of Hedera, and being able to create use cases that are even more secure than you would typically find in other ecosystems. So, I mean, I think that might be a ways out, but it's still very exciting to think about that, where there's use cases that, if they're mission critical and you need something to be carried out and know that there's not going to be an issue in terms of a vulnerability with a smart contract or what have you, being able to find a workaround or a way to do that, leveraging the tool set that Hedera brings to the table, I think long term is going to be really exciting. So that's one of the other things I've noticed.
Definitely. Hey, Jim, how are you doing?
Hey, Elisabeth. Hey, everyone. Thank you for having me on. And Jessie, thank you for the little call out there. I appreciate it. I don't think I contributed that much. You guys were already pretty advanced, but yeah, you guys.
What's that, Jim?
Always appreciate the conversations, Jim.
It's all good. I was just saying that they're doing great things. I'm a big proponent. Kind of as you guys probably know, with our open source background, really big proponent of interoperability, and that's the angle we drive with our own technology, and certainly around data desiloing data. So this is exactly the right way to go. And I think one of the things, and I believe May inadvertently mentioned this, is that this does require kind of a gravitation towards standards. However, and I do quite a bit of standards work. Standards are it's one of those things. Somebody's basically got to take it for the team. So they don't really appear until somebody does the bulk of the work. So kudos for you guys.
That's true. That's true. Well, hi, Wayne. How are you today? Nice to join us.
Thank you. What's up? Nice.
What's up?
Good. Hey, I know I jumped in the conversation late. I just heard you mention something. First of all, thanks for having me again. Love these conversations, allowing people to really kind of dig deep. My question I had, now you talked about, I kind of thought about the word longevity when you talked about long-term. What other potential things do you have in place to ensure, long-term with projects? A lot of people within the community, have goals of long-term, goals, things of that nature. I mean, what other measures do you have in place to ensure, everything that's going in? Again, you may have touched on this earlier, and I apologize. I kind of jumped in a little late, finished up a recording session.
Yeah, in terms of, are you speaking longevity in terms of our platform itself, or just the ecosystem, or
your platform specifically?
Yeah, okay. I touched on that a bit earlier in the conversation in terms of a better part of this year and most of last year when the platform was in development. We've been working on quite a few things that will be able to be leveraged on the back end. Specifically, we're working on the API and SDK functionality so that we can integrate Hashport into platforms natively on their platform. So that's one big thing. Also, being able to attract larger scale use cases potentially for this service with those robust feature sets, and then also the NFT functionality that's just come out. Is something, a big component of what we've built out over the last several months, which was a use case that was brought to us, and we were all too happy to oblige and help create that functionality. I think the NFT use case, as we move further and further ahead into the future, especially with decentralized gaming and the gaming ecosystems, being multiple billion users out there, over time, I think that the interoperability of digital assets in terms of non-fungible tokens will also become a large component of the platform. So yeah, I mean, we're always looking to enhance the services that we offer. To sort of answer your question without giving everything away, we are working on other more smaller features that provide a very large convenience to users migrating between these networks that are connected to Hashport, so that we're all about trying to minimize as many of the steps as possible to users simply being able to take their assets from one network and migrate them simply and easily over to the other without needing to exit the ecosystem to get that done. So over the coming months and quarters, we're going to add additional features that are going to I think really lower the barriers to entry in terms of the convenience factor, and effectively take away the reason not to move between networks if it's just so easy and seamless. I think that most users will want to do that, and this space is all about experimentation and trying, and I think that when you make that as convenient as possible, but not only that, with the amazing governing council members that we have on board, you get that level of functional trust with Hashport where on other platforms you might not necessarily know who the who the validators are, or they may not be of the same stature in that you don't really know whether or not they would be willing to place reputational risk to do something nefarious. Whereas with the validators that we have, such as WorldPay, the HBAR Foundation,
You just brought
what's that?
You just
What's
brought
that?
Galaxy.
Yeah, Galaxy, Stable Node, which is a sister company of MakerDAO. All of these amazing validators, provide a level of functional trust to the platform that I don't think you get from many other interop solutions. So, really trying to lower the barriers or the reasons not to use an interoperability solution is what we've been going after from the start with Hashport.
Yeah, I wanted to because of
the community, love the passion you bring to the community. So thanks for taking my question.
Sure. Yeah, not a problem. Anytime, happy to answer.
That's a great question, Wayne. Always happy to have you speaking on our spaces.
Thank you. Always.
One of the things also about that you're doing with Hashport that is so intense to me is that the security of when you do interoperability is dicey at best, and a lot of platforms can't handle that. What does Hashport put into place to handle that kind of security issue?
In terms of, I mean, the way that the platforms works is when users bring assets to Hashport and they make a transaction request, what ends up happening is that request gets circulated to the 9 validators, any one of which could be the first one to pick up that transaction. Now, what subsequently happens from there is they sign that transaction and turn around and circulate it to the rest of the validating members. And a transaction won't get submitted until a supermajority of the validators have signed that transaction request. And then once that happens, it's submitted as an HCS topic natively on Hedera. That's logged immutably. And from there and only there do representative assets either get minted on a foreign network or burnt, and the native assets on Hedera subsequently get unlocked and put back into a user wallet. So there's with other interoperability solutions, sometimes it's validators running on one of the 2 networks to be able to do that. Whereas also in the case of Hedera, going forward, if and when other networks are added to the platform, HCS is always going to be an integral part of validating transactions, and so just you can't get better security in terms of logging transaction requests than Hedera. I mean, you get absolute finality, the network's ABFT. So we really think that that's sort of best in class security for leveraging an interop solution.
Yeah, well, we do too. Jim? Jim?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Hey, Jessie, you actually kind of just sparked the thought in my mind. And, I was just wondering if you guys had actually articulated this. So you talked about the validators being known, and I was just thinking about this concept of reputational capital, which is kind of interesting, right? Because if you think about staking, we often talk about staking, crypto or whatever, some kind of financial capital. Have you thought any deeper about that? Because to me that's a really interesting thing, because I mean I can imagine that is a real point of leverage and one that you could use to vet kind of validators, or at least put some skin in the game. But just really interested about the concept.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've thought about it any further than these institutions and organizations are industry leaders, and some of which are have very 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 large market caps and reputations to uphold. In the future, it's definitely something as a platform, we're always looking for innovative and cutting edge ways to differentiate the platform. So we'd entirely be open to looking at things of that nature in terms of reputational scoring and different things like that, and potentially skin in the game, as you put it. One platform, obviously, and they always come up, but Dovu's in particular looking at that kind of thing, which is very, very interesting. Matt Smitty's can't say enough good things about Matt. That's something he's been considering a great deal for Dovu and beyond. So that might be something to look into as well.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it requires a little more thinking. I mean, let's put it this way. I haven't thought about it enough, and a little bit of homework for me. But it's something that we hear a lot, not necessarily in context of validators, but in general. Like from enterprises, or like I was in a call just an hour ago with a potential client. This idea of the anonymity of the space and concerns about being hacked and security, and what happens if if you have a problem, who's they like to use the term, who's next to your choke. I don't know. I mean, it's not again, I don't think it's binary. It's one or the other. There's a gradient to this, but I really like this idea of kind of reputational leverage and reputational capital. So yeah, thanks for probing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this all comes down to the space is great in terms of wanting to have decentralized trust and platforms that don't need a centralized source of origin. At the same time, there's a sliding scale between functionality and the ability for a use case to be realistically scaled out to its to its biggest conclusion, and what that entails. And to your point, I've thought about this for quite a while in terms of having functional trust being, you might not have complete and utter decentralization where, every single person that's on the network is validating, but you do have a set of validators, much the same way that currently at least, the Hedera Governing Council functions that are very highly regarded and very, very publicly open about their platforms and who they are. So you can leverage that to create these interesting use cases whereby if it was just, a band of 9 random individuals who happen to have servers and they wanted to, for whatever reason, put together an interop solution, well, that's not going to carry the same weight, right? And I think there's a place for leveraging our existing centralized institutions in conjunction with one another to create these interesting use cases and key pieces of infrastructure that we need to have more decentralized ecosystems ultimately, and the free flow of assets and information.
Yeah, that's excellent. One last question from me. I apologize for running on this, but are you guys working with the Inner Work Alliance? I vaguely remember somebody mentioning it, but I don't know if that was active or projective.
I think it's probably projected. I have not been in touch with them, but it's a great point to talk to the Interwork Alliance. I know of them, and I know they've been working closely with Hedera. Hedera is a member, so definitely something to look into, and even would be happy to discuss with you, after the spaces.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And Jessie, I wanted to just mention that you recently ran a poll where you had some interesting results from the community about the next networks that they'd like to see Hashport adopt. And you had Chainlink and Quant Networks, but Unibright was the front runner.
Yeah, I've had conversations with quite a few networks. Interestingly enough, there has to be when we do have those conversations, there has to sort of be a good fit in terms of where they're at as well, right? And what their sort of use cases are, and whether there's aligned interests or paths even in terms of what they're trying to do. We're looking at every possible opportunity to work with other networks over time. That said, it's interesting that there's a whole contingent that was looking for Unibrate in particular. Have had a couple conversations with them so far. Definitely early days, but going forward, we're going to really look to work with platforms that want to work with us, and in particular want to work with Hedera. I know that the HBAR Foundation had a Twitter Spaces not too long ago. I think just yesterday or the day before, actually, with Brandon, the HBAR Bull, and on there. A question was asked to Shane about, the ability to potentially be working with, would the HBAR Foundation ever work with, other foundations such as the Ethereum Foundation or, Algorand or any of these other networks. And, Shane was receptive to that. And I think in the ethos of interoperability and what we're trying to do in the space as a whole, you always have to be open to those ideas, because that's where great use cases come from to leverage the strengths of other networks to the benefit of whatever use cases are trying to come up with innovative solutions to world problems. And I just think that going forward there's going to be a lot more conversations and around this, and a lot more collaboration to that end with other networks, dApps, stakeholders inside and outside the space. So just really exciting, really exciting. And the one thing I will say about having worked in the space, now for almost a year and been a part of it for the better part of 4 years, people that gravitate towards DLT networks and blockchains and Hedera, they really take a collaborative angle to things. They're typically problem solvers. They're typically people that see a way forward for leveraging these technologies to come up with a better product, dependent on what that is, but across the board. And I think that most people here recognize the immense potential for the technology. So I think as a whole, we're going to move the space forward that much further by all working together, and most people are very interested in doing that. So it's a breath of fresh air, I think, from a lot more centralized organizations, traditionally that are hyper competitive with one another and not as willing to work together on things.
Well, but Chainlink is on the governing council, isn't it? I would think that would be a natural.
Yeah, I mean, we're absolutely looking at all those use cases, Chainlink in particular, and there will be more developments on that front as things move forward, no doubt.
Yeah, it's very exciting. One of the things that I think you tweeted today, Lance, was if the other companies and organizations involved would be more engaged when we have these big announcements.
Yeah, definitely a huge opportunity there, I think, for kind of cross marketing, cross promoting. And certainly, I know the governing council members don't want to talk about their own use cases till they're ready, but they probably could definitely celebrate the ones that go live, like Avery Dennison's today.
Yeah, it would be a kind of a boost to the whole ecosystem, because I think in general we all have to do our part to create the awareness. But when a big use case like Avery Dennison comes up or something, it would be great to have shout outs by everybody.
I think that's a great idea, Elisabeth.
Yeah, it really is needed. The more, personally, I've been in crypto for a long time. So these kind of markets that we're in today, although it's kind of unique, we have seen massive sell-offs. So it's a great time to get down to some serious business of building the ecosystem that you're involved with, as opposed to, fixating on prices and things. We all would like it to be higher, but these things go up and down. So I think, as Lehman said on one of the spaces, I believe it was in January, there's typically 100 different things being built, and then there's a big shakeup, and then 4 or 5 rise to the top. So I'm looking at that is what we're going through right now, is that type of time that Lehman was talking about, that all these things are being shaken out, and there will be tokens and platforms that don't survive this time period. But in the long run, it could be a good thing because the cream will rise to the top.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the industry is the same as the traditional businesses, where you've got, if you were to look 10 years out, you have probably 90% of the stocks that were around are no longer there and replaced by different ones and different companies. So I think that's much the same. But in times like these, the space is working. It never stops working. It never stops working on the problems. It never stops grappling with them. And we always end up, whether be it 3 months, 6 months, a year and a half, we always end up coming out, the following cycle, having a whole host of new functionality, features, and interest in the space. And I mean, as the technology progresses and advances, and more people become aware of it, it's just part and parcel for the course. I think at this point, there's been, I think, 3 or 4 of these kinds of market conditions over the last 12 years or so, and I think for a lot of veterans that are out there that are building, it's more about the use cases and actually developing things that will be able to scale. So super exciting stuff's always happening in the space, regardless of what unfortunate price action may be happening at the time.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm not that. Although it'd be great to see something go up and up and up. That's not really how it works.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not. I did want to give Happy an opportunity to give us a little update on what's going on with staking, which everybody really is so interested in. What's going on, Happy, with the staking over at Stater?
Sure. I think we're currently focused completely on the V2 version, and we're going to kickstart a beta testing and take feedback from the community members on the UI, and we're aiming to release it in somewhere in end of June or July. We're super excited about that. We'll have the unstaking functionality, and once we have dexes like Sausage Swap on Hedera, we would want to create a HBAR ETH and HBAR pool where you can have an instant unstaking or instant liquidity for HBAR ETH.
And what's going on with the APR these days?
Come on, Elisabeth. Come again.
What is the APR currently for the staked HBAR ETH?
Currently, right? It's around 50%.
Well, that's very good in this market.
And we have 483. We have like 483 million HBAR staked with that Stater right now.
Excellent. And you were saying the next you're working on the UI UX?
Yes, we're working on the UI UX for the version 2, where we'll be having an unstaking and withdrawal options for the users.
I see. Okay, thanks very much. Well, if anyone in the audience has any questions for our guests, all you have to do is raise your hand and I'll give you a shout out and you can come on up. I do want to say that one of the things I got from this space was really the excitement about having your NFTs be in beta, since that I really think one of the things that is going to create awareness for the Hedera network is NFTs.
Yeah, I think so too. I think NFTs are very powerful given the inherent benefits that Hedera has and the cost effectiveness of NFTs on Hedera. I think that will lend itself well to awareness for the platform as well going forward, which is very exciting.
Yeah, one of the things, I was on Twitter and I was on a thread and people were saying, NFTs are so bad for the environment, and I said to them, you're talking about NFTs on Ethereum. If you'd like to do a carbon negative network, join us on Hedera. And they were like, "What's Hedera?" So it's really...
there you go. back to the awareness thing, right? So yeah. I mean, we're all doing our part in the community and in our respective communities to to educate and talk to people whenever something like that comes up. And it's always great because then typically you've got another a convert as soon as you've talked to them and explained the benefits that there are. So
definitely, and the fact that it's carbon, the appeal of the appeal of the network to combat these people who don't like the mining of Bitcoin or the the carbon use of NFTs. It really can be a great way for people to reach out to other platforms and say, why don't you come into Hedera and use NFTs on our platform?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of great platforms building out there right now, and a lot of great wallets like Hashpack. And I just think that all the wonderful tools that are required for a explosive growth in the ecosystem are coming online. So it's an exciting time in the Hedera world for sure.
Well, we have one of the OG NFT people, Patches. Hi, Patches.
Hey, how's it going?
Really good.
Awesome. Yeah, I only caught half of this talk, but it's been awesome. I fully agree with the awareness being the main problem, and I think I don't really have a question for Hashport because you guys are just well spoken and kind of talk about what you're doing real well. But the point I would make is that Hashport allows that conversation of interoperability and ease of dev onboarding from other chains to be so much more prolific. Because like Hedera has native EVM support and understanding. You can use smart contracts with Solidity to talk to HTS. But the statement, hey, if you've already created your ERC20 token, you can port it to Hedera and continue your project over here. I think just pebbles on a pile makes a boulder, and it's just such a statement to say to the biggest pool of Web3 developers, hey, Hedera is ready for you to not have to change how you code or what you've coded. You just move your project to a different network, and then you continue, and you have all of this benefit of faster consensus, ability to use HCS, all of the additions of HTS on top of it. So just thanks for existing Hashport and making the carrot of trying to get other developers over into Hedera just so much more juicier, for lack of a better analogy.
Yeah, absolutely. We aim to be here for quite some time, and over that time period, work with everyone in the community and stakeholders to really leverage the platform in ways that will continually, to your point, Patches, educate and enlighten other community members that to the benefits of Hedera and the use cases that can be developed on it. So,
well, thank you so much. Well, we're coming to the top of the hour, so we're going to end our space soon. And I just want to thank Charles and Wayne and Jim and Patches and Happy Chappie and Lance for coming and co-hosting, and Greg, thank you for speaking. And May, she had to jump off, but Jessie, I'll just give you the last word if you'd like to leave our community with some final words.
Yeah, sure. I think it's been quite a long journey to get to the point that we're all at now collectively, and I think that everything is coming together in a really great way to have a wonderful kickoff to welcoming the rest of the world to the Hedera ecosystem and what it has to offer. And I think everyone here is so inviting to new members, and I just think that if we continue with that sort of ethos and collaborative approach, that we're going to in very short order, as these conversations progress into the future, we're going to have a lot more interest and a lot more attendees at these kind of spaces. Elisabeth, it's always a pleasure to be on with you and the community that you're building here, and just incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to talk to everyone today.
Thank you so much, Jessie. Well, we really enjoyed having you on, and please come on again, and we're going to follow you. And just let me ask you, when do you think your NFT beta will be going out of beta?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, betas are betas for a reason. Hedera's been around for a couple of years now, and they're still in beta, right? I mean, Solana backtracked their network to say that they're a beta. Most of these networks are still beta, so I don't know. I can't give any clear timelines as to when the feature may not be considered beta anymore. But I mean, it will be active and functional, and users, as I said, any NFTs that are whitelisted for the platform will be able to use it going forward to migrate wherever they'd like to go.
Okay, well, we should have HCraft Punks be on that list. So
we are in talks.
Oh, good. Happy to hear that, because they're a big driver of NFTs in our community. So anyhow,
absolutely
appreciate you coming on. You've been really giving us a lot of information. Thank you, Happy, for coming and giving us an update on Stater, and we look forward to your V2. And we'll end this space as we always do with Hello Future. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
Evening.